how do you help people remember that, yes, software can do so much, but if you don't spend the time thinking through what you actually want, you're not going to achieve anything.
One of the first things that I shared is a French quote which says, "Time does not respect things which are built without him." And I would say we should never forget that we are role modeling. Someone is looking at you, even if you don't notice it, even if you don't realize it, someone is looking at you as a role model. Could be your child, could be your friends, could be your co-workers, because so therefore realizing that you are inspiring someone to do things, to act in a certain way, makes you accountable for your behavior and the experience you are offering to people on a daily basis at work or in your life. Is being aware about the experience you are offering and the model that you are proposing to the world around you.
Are you ready to learn how to grow your entrepreneurial mindset so that you can not just survive, but thrive now and into the future? This is your show. Welcome to PossibLaw. Let's get into it. Will, thanks for being on PossibLaw today. Super excited to talk to you.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Sal. It's been a long time and I was looking forward to have this conversation with you. So yeah, thanks for having me today. Brilliant.
I think you have such a super interesting journey and you're such a good person that I think we're going to have a great conversation today and learn a lot, and our audience is going to learn a lot about your background and profession and how you got where you got. I do want to spend a little time on more than who you are as the professional. And so I always like to start these conversations by asking you, what do you like to do in your free time? Do you have a family? What do you do outside of work?
Oh, I do so many things outside of work. And one of the things that I'm enjoying a lot is I have a 15-year-old boy called Arthur. And we're doing a lot of, I live in the French Alps, so there's a lot of outdoor sports that we do together. So in my free time, it's either a lot of sports, snowboarding, wakeboarding, rock climbing, skydiving, those type of things, so we're really adrenaline junkie, him and I, which may sound funny, but something that I do like a lot in my free time is practicing yoga and meditation. Oh yeah, I like attending some courses, seminar, doing some retreat in my free time, just for my mental health. So that's what I do. And yes, I have a family. I have a 15-year-old boy called Arthur and my fiancée called Diana. She has a 8-year-old girl. And yeah, so enjoying spending some time together. And I'm sure we'll touch base on that, but making sure I carve out some times and quality time with my family means a lot. It gives me a lot of energy. So yes, that's what I do in my free time. So
I think there's two things I love to talk about there that I also spend a lot of time talking to people about, and I focus on. One is being outside, nature. There's something about spending time beyond your computer that is so important for your soul. And I think in our society, we get lost in that a little bit. And then the other is that, finding a career where you can spend real engagement time with your family is both good for your soul and actually really good for your work. And so I wanted to start with why you decided to sort of spend time focused on making sure you're outside. Is that something that is like just particularly French where you live, or was that like a concerted decision you make? I know here in the States, a lot of people, we get lost in the city, or even if you live in the suburbs, and we just don't spend a lot of time outside. And I know other cultures think about it differently. So I'm curious, why is that important to you?
oh, I would say, yeah, it's probably part of the French lifestyle to spend some time in nature for sure. But I would say that's a conscious decision that I made a few years ago. When, yeah, I'm sure I told you that I had a health problem 6 or 7 years ago. And then from that time, when I hit that wall, it completely changed my lifestyle. And when I started to spend some time and investing time on my mental health, I quickly realized that being close to nature, first of all, it brings you a lot of humility. When you start working on mindfulness, nature is a good thing to bring you back to mindfulness, focusing on the present moment. And it's a good way for me to kind of stepping away from the pressure, the ongoing solicitation, notification, email, and yeah, spending some time on my own, and reconnecting with nature is always a good thing for mental health. And that it brings some positive impacts on your professional life, as you said, because it brings some calm and happiness. And yes, so being in nature is so important to me.
You have kind of an older kid and a younger kid now also, and I've learned with friends who have that sort of dichotomy within their lives that it's sort of a different break in priorities and where you spend time. But the universal part of that is that you do want to engage with them. And I'm
Yeah.
curious, when you were working many, many, many more hours in jobs that were maybe not so good for your health, right? Was changing beyond the health scare, did you see a better connection with your older son as you sort of transitioned away from working all the time? Because I think a lot of people get stuck in I have ambition. I want to do something great. I want to be really good at my job, but I also want to connect with my family. And in today's day and age, that's a difficult conflict a lot of people work through. How did you figure out how to balance those two things?
Actually, Sal, I'm still working long hours. I have a very, very busy lifestyle between, I'm now working and helping and supporting one of the largest mining projects on the planet. So I'm very, very busy. I'm a professor in two business school. So there's a lot of things that I'm doing at work. But actually, the reality is, going back to the word you've used, ambition, I've realized that ambition is not a bad thing per se, is what you do with it. So therefore, something that I've understood is work or people, they won't give you the time free, they won't give you easily the ability to free some time for your family. So the conscious decision that you have to take is carving out time for yourself first and for your family. So how I manage to get around this? In my week, in my agenda, there's some specific time slot which are fully dedicated to my family and some of them dedicated to myself. And I make those uh, time slot known by all my colleagues, people working with me, and just a bit of explanation around it. I felt guilty when I started doing this because I was like, oh, I'm not available when people need me. People will think I'm not a professional. I'm not engaged at work. And then one of my mentors said to me, Will, your work as a leader and as a consultant, as a lawyer, and as a professor is to share your energy, passion, dedication, inspiration. And he said to me, every single time you invest time for yourself or for your family, it's actually a great investment for your work because your energy, I like saying that your energy introduces you before you even speak. So having this quality time, feeling great and composed, helped me to come at work and to engage in every single meeting with a lot of passion, energy, and it's, yeah. So the way I manage to do that is just setting boundaries and making people aware of those boundaries. So
I love how you've described that. Energy introduces you before you speak, and finding your energy so that you can be the best version of yourself is such an amazing way to think about that. And I also love the framework that you gave people to really think about how you set boundaries for yourself, but still have ambition. I've gotten asked all the time, right? Like, how do you structure your life? Because my family has says, like, sometimes you work a lot, right? I do. It hasn't really changed. And it gets to this idea that I think we've talked about, you and I before, and just generally society talks about this idea of work life balance. And I've always thought it was kind of odd because that doesn't, I don't really know what that balance means. It's like you're supposed to have equal amounts of each side instead of something that another person on my podcast really said was work-life integration. How do you figure out where work and personal and family fits in and you make decisions on that? And for you, you've structured that in a very framework focused way. And I think that's actually really kind for yourself and also for the people that work with you, because you've given them the clarity they need to understand
Here you go.
where you're spending your time and why and what matters to you. But then on the other side, it gives you the clarity and the mental ability and sort of the mental peace is the right word, the peace of mind to know that you're still doing a good job, but you have being spend time for yourself. When you went about doing that, did people start pushing back on you and saying, I know you have this time for yourself or this time for your family, but I need you right now? How did you deal with that?
Fantastic question. And actually goes back to just a bit of history about my career. I think I was very successful in my work as a business lawyer, working for one of the biggest mining company in the world. But I decided after this health issue that I had to do a sidestep, going back to school, doing this executive MBA at the EM Business School. And I've started my self-awareness journey. I'm saying that because boundaries, the way you set boundaries in your life, on your personal life or work, is exactly the same thing. You know, so I had to learn myself, being self-aware, that I was not good at setting boundaries in my personal life. But when I understood how it worked, when I understood that being pushed, when you set boundaries, people will always push your boundaries. It's natural. People do that, your friends, your family, if you're in a romantic relationship as well. But what happens is when you make sure that people respect your boundaries, so you realize that it builds up your self-confidence. As you said, it helps to build up your self-confidence. It helps to build up peace of mind, because there's one thing that we need to understand at a personal level. Every single time you promise something to yourself that you're not doing or respecting, your self-confidence is eroding. So it's a virtual cycle to be able at work to set boundaries, to be fully transparent about the boundaries you have. As you said, what you're going to do in that particular time for people to understand why you're carving out some time for yourself. So the way I managed to push those people back is being very confident in the rationale behind the boundaries I was setting, because I knew it was good for myself. I knew it was good for my family. And so I had to explain to them, you're trying to push those boundaries, but I'm saying they're necessary for me. But you can reach out to me at that particular time. So my message is, when you start setting boundaries, you'll be always pushed. People will push your boundaries just to test you. So it's life. It's how people work. So it's being confident in reaffirming your boundaries. That's the whole work.
Yeah, I think something you said there, though, that is an interesting insight by you that I think people can take away, that I'm definitely going to take away, is that while it requires confidence to set boundaries so that you can tell others what your boundaries are, if you don't follow your own boundaries, it actually erodes your own self-confidence. And so it's this vicious cycle that if you don't invest in you, you end up getting pushed around. You never get actually what you want. And here's the critical thing I heard. That means you're not your best self. You're not presenting your best at work or in life. That's such an interesting insight. How did you figure that out?
Oh, basically what absolutely changed my life was this journey that I went in doing my executive MBA, because there's something specific about the business school where I went. In that particular business school, the EM Lyon Business School, a leader needs to be very self-aware. First of all, to understand himself or herself, and then to be able to regulate his emotion. So the personal transformation is part of, in my opinion, the training that a leader needs to go through. And I've quickly realized that every single time I was not respecting my boundaries, actually and discussing with some experts, your subconscious mind is telling yourself, I can't trust you. It's as simple as that. So therefore, when people start pushing your boundaries, you start questioning, is my boundary legitimate? Am I entitled to have boundaries? But once you get that self-confidence and you are fully self-aware, it's easy for you to push that. So my personal journey, transformational journey, helped me to figure out, first of all, my triggers, who I am, what I'm good at, what I'm not good at, and then with that, building up that confidence over time. So when people push me, challenge me, I'm open to other opinion, other ideas, but I'm comfortable in being misunderstood, if you see what I'm saying.
Being comfortable in your own skin is such a cheat code for life. It's this confidence factor. It's actually something I'm very aware of for my daughter, because we live in this age where it's difficult for everybody, but for women and young girls especially, with social media, the amount of stuff they're just inundated with to impact their own self-confidence is wild. And so one of the things I'm really trying to do is teach her how to be kind of irrationally confident in who she is, so that she has more of the ability to off-put all the external stuff. And so I love that you talk about it in the context of your own transformative journey to find your own self-confidence, to be who you are, and be comfortable in your own skin. And the fact that maybe some people misunderstand you or don't think of you in a certain way, but that's okay. You are who you are. I would love to talk about how you got there a little bit. You talked about going to business school and learning leadership skills, but I don't think that probably would have done it if you had done it maybe 15 years ago necessarily. I think a lot of what anybody learns is both time and space and experience they had before. Sometimes you're ready for it, sometimes you're not, right? And so I want to take a little bit of a step back and understand kind of where you came from. You are a wildly successful person, but you were a wildly successful lawyer before you went into this kind of other transformative journey in your career. So I want to go backwards. What made you want to get into the law in the first place? Were you one of these kids who just wanted to do it always, or did you stumble into it like I did?
Actually, I think I stumbled in it. And what happened, when I was a teenager, I come from south of France, so I was really enjoying myself with my friends. I wasn't even sure about a career or anything. And one day, someone from my was at high school. Actually, they invited a business lawyer to talk about his work, what he was doing. So actually, it's not the law that inspired me. I think that was that particular lawyer that inspired me. His style, his approach, what he was explaining to me about law, and it was a calling. I was like, yes, I found my path. It was just kind of, when he said, law gives you the ability to understand how things work, and on some particular dimension, to have an impact and a contribution on change. That was done. Deal done. And then I went into law. I loved it. Business law, I loved it, for many, many, many years. I worked in a French listed company, a small, middle-sized company in France, and then moved to England, where I worked for an aerospace group, experiencing and working on large contract, large deal. And on the top of being a Frenchman in England, which was an experience in itself, amazing experience. And then I moved to Rio Tinto. What an experience moving in a major company. I was really enjoying myself at a professional level. I had a great career and working on major projects and bringing some change in Europe, Middle East, and Africa. But then what happened? I could feel that there was something not complete and not complete. I heard someone saying one time, I was reaching the top of my mountain, but I was not happy. Something was missing. And I think what I realized is I was probably disconnected to who I am, truly. And I had a couple of discussions, and someone said to me, you'll be very successful in your life and in your career once you bring those two together. My friend used that to describe me. They said Dr. Wilfried and Mr. Will. Mr. Will is very fun, engaging, and whereas Dr. Wilfried is very structured, very organized. And for years, I thought that I had to be successful at work, I had to be just one particular person, not being approachable, not being authentic, not being vulnerable, not bringing humor at work. And then I realized that, I had to change something. So basically, I said to everybody, I'm going to step away from law for a few years. That's what I did for 5 years. And guess what? Law called me back. Because actually what happened, I've been called by one of my previous employer, Rio Tinto. They said, now, Will, we know you're a good lawyer, but you come with all those additional skills and experience. We are aware about all the work you do with your own company. Can you bring that to one of our major projects? I'm working as a legal advisor. You can probably share some of your learning experience, help people to upskill people. So you see, law was a calling when I was 16. And law is coming back to me saying, oh, you went through your own journey, but now we want you back. But yes, to go back to your question, I was just realizing that something was missing in my life and I was not fulfilled, happy. So I had to dive deep into myself, change many things just to and I'm a lawyer now. And I'm so happy about my work. It's not work at all. It's passion, fun, and enjoying what I do. So, yeah.
I advocate for people to remember that it's more about the journey than the specific endpoint you got to. And part of the reason I say that is that Paul Graham, who's very famous for starting Y Combinator, has this article called How to Do Great Work, or this essay. But one of the things that he talks about is this idea that finding the thing that you are so good at, that brings you happiness, that you're so passionate about, oftentimes comes from sort of strange interactions or experiences. It's not necessarily linear, right? Like you thought, man, this business lawyer, I met him, that's what I want to do. And you got into your career and you were like killing it. And yet you weren't totally fulfilled. And so you made the concerted choice to go somewhere else, learn new things, and then you got brought back. And now you have found more meaning in your work than you did before, even though in a lot of ways you're kind of in a similar place, right? And I think that is
Exactly.
really a really important part of the conversation of journey is there's more to you than the structured work person. And if you incorporate all the different things you do, you can be better at your job and frankly reach higher mountains, as you've said. I'm curious, we talked in the beginning, we touched on it a little bit, but I think this connects together. This idea of ambition is often talked about either in the negative or as in this idea that ambition requires you to work 8,000 hours a week and you can't have a family and you can't do all these other things. I've looked at it as sort of changing the formula of what ambition looks like for you, making that decision and learning that decision. How have you gone about figuring out what ambition looks like for you in the context of your journey?
When I realized that I was seeking external validation and I wanted to prove something to people, but once you reach that stage, when you realize you don't need external validation, you don't need people to tell you you're great for you to feel great, when you reach the stage where you take critics and praises exactly at the same level, you're like, oh, that's great, but I don't need them. Then something changed, something clicked in your mind. And I've realized that ambition is as I was saying earlier, it's not a bad thing. It's what you do with ambition. Because when you are, ambition can lead you to work long hours, to neglect your relationship, to neglect your health, so that's the bad side of ambition, And however, ambition can help you to be very innovative, to take risks, to be very competent at what you're doing, to be curious because you know what you want to achieve and you put your passion and energy in what you do. But once I realized that ambition, it was a driver, just for me to focus my energy and passion, but something that that I had to use as well to be very positive in my relationship, in my transformation journey. And as you said, for using ambition as well in my personal journey. An example, meditation. When I've started meditating, I was like, oh, I would love to share that with people. I would love for people to understand that this practice, it worked with me. There's some other practice that people can use for mental health, how it change your lifestyle, even at work. There's something I share with people is 1 minute to arrive with my team and colleagues. I said, when you step in your office, just take a minute to breathe. When you leave the office, you arrive at home, take 1 minute with yourself to breathe. Just some kind of cool learnings from meditation. But my ambition was to spread that message, to make people aware, you see? So I've used that ambition to work on my personal practice and improve my lifestyle, improve my energy, inspiring people to reach their peace of mind, if you see what I'm saying. And I've invested exactly the same amount of energy and time at work or in that particular aspect of my life. So ambition is a driver by which we can achieve amazing things, but we need to be careful because ambition can take everything out of you if you're not using it carefully, if you see what I'm saying.
I do. And I think people who are high agency, who want to get stuff done, who want to make an impact, often have that problem, right? They lose sight of everything else and become myopic in what they do. And almost the means justify the ends, right? Yes, I'm not a great person. Yes, I work all the time. Yes, I haven't seen my children in 5 years, but I have this impact I'm trying to drive for. Instead of thinking about it as, yes, it's fuel for your fire, but there's more to you and you can actually achieve more if you consider what's around you. So I think what you talk about there is very inspiring for anybody who's trying to do great things, is just a critical reminder. Ambition is important. I agree with you. I think it's important. I don't think it's a bad thing per se,
That's all.
but how you use that ambition is on you and it's a choice you make. And so it's an important one to remember. Something else you said there about your journey and tied to ambition is your willingness to basically walk away from, quote unquote, the pinnacle of the kind of work you were doing as a lawyer to find something new. And it's something that I talk about a lot right now because I think in this age of AI and the age of transformative change, people are going to be required to be more willing to experiment, to try, to get uncomfortable in what they're doing. And I like to make sure I clarify, I don't think it's just being growth mindseted, which is like a willingness to learn. I think that's part of it. But I think it's also entrepreneurial. And I don't mean starting new businesses. I mean, being willing to take risk and try new things is important. So I'm curious, how did you learn that skill? Because I have to imagine that when you were in that moment and you were going to go try something, it was scary. And for most people, that fear stops them in their tracks. How did you get past that?
Oh, there's a quote that I share with my boy Arthur all the time. It's boats are safe in the harbor, but they're not made for that. So at one stage, if you want to expand, if you want to develop, if you want to connect to your better self or higher self, the best version of yourself, you have to take risks, and most of the time, how I get over that fear of change, fear of unknown, is simple word, is a simple approach. I would say, let's give it a try and see, because I've tried many things. And then after a couple of days, I was like, I don't like it. Instead of just me fantasizing about things, but not trying them. You see? So I was like, oh, wow. Even sometimes I felt, oh, I'm not at the right level to try this, but let's give it a try. Let's give it a try. And then when I realized that objective, it brought me some confidence in trying new things, learning new things. Because I think as human, we need to continuously trying to expand our map, how we see the world, how we see ourselves, trying new things. And something that I've learned at the business school that I love, that I'm still implementing, that is when it is the last time you tried something for the first time. So every single 3 months,
If you want to
I'm like,
continue building your
oh, is it
entrepreneurial
what I want
mindset and enjoy our content, we would love
try?
for you to
The
subscribe,
new
hit
things
the
that I
bell,
want to
follow
try.
along.
And
You can also
so there's
find us
so
on our
many things that I
Substack,
try.
PossibLaw.
Archery,
Abrazos.
painting, many things. It's just trying something new, which puts yourself outside of your comfort zone, and then you gain the confidence and the habit to do this, and then you're not scared about trying new things, even at work. So that's how I passed that limitation and limiting belief that I had, and yeah, many people have it as well.
Was that something you learned from your parents growing up, or how did you, or was it just ingrained in you? Where did that come from? Because I've learned that's actually pretty unique to be comfortable with that level of change and risk. Where did that come from?
First of all, I come from a military background, so being innovative and it's not really my background. But I had to say that from a very young age, I was always very curious about things, and I had to say my dad. Actually, my dad traveled a lot. He worked in some very remote areas, you see, and every single time he was coming back from his trip, he was sharing the experience of being in an uncomfortable situation, learning new things, and it gave me that appetite to try new things. And yeah, so every single time there's something new, test and learn. I think it's a good approach in your life or at work. Test. You may learn out something you don't know, and yeah, I think it's part of my nature. Not yeah, thinking outside the box, trying new things, being innovative. I think that's part of my nature. But because I was a lawyer and I was thinking that being a lawyer means being very structured, organized, always thinking within the box. Actually, I had all those limiting beliefs about what being a lawyer meant. So that's sidestep helped me to that. Oh, you can be a great lawyer and just keep that innovative, experimental mindset.
I think that's a great reminder for lawyers, legal professionals listening, is that you can be a great lawyer. You can be the best lawyer there is and also be innovative and also be business focused. And I know, especially in the United States, I feel like lawyers get stuck in this box of, I'm just a lawyer. I have to be the best lawyer I can be. I'm not responsible for anything else. And that really hurts them, especially when they are either counseling as outside counsel business teams or in-house counsel and working with the business. I like to say, whenever I'm consulting, legal departments, your job is not to be the best lawyer you can be. Your job is to help the business achieve whatever outcome it is trying to achieve. That is your job. And yes, you have to help mitigate risk and you have to be a counselor of choice, but focus on helping the business move forward. That's really what you need to spend time on. And I'm curious for you, as long as I've known you, you've been sort of a business minded lawyer, right? You think from that hat and then you layer in the legal. How did you come about from that? Was that something you were taught early in your, education as a professional? How did you figure out that framework?
Actually, thanks to some of the people I work with. I was telling you that one of my first job was head of legal in a French listed company, middle-sized French listed company. The founder was the CEO. He was a genius. He was trusting people, trusting young professional, and And every single time he was asking me for a piece of advice, I came to him with, what we know as a legal note, like reminding him about, the laws, what happened, some of the previous decision, my advice, putting another caveat, oh, you can do this, but there's some associated risks. So you can do this, but you're the one taking the decision. I'm just kind of telling you what you can do. And after a couple of months, he came to my desk with a 4 or 5 pages note that I wrote to him. And he said, I'm paying you to be my legal advisor. So when I come to you and I said, can I do this? You should come to me saying yes or no. And just making me aware about one of the biggest risks we need to take into account. But you're the lawyer. I'm paying you as well to take some risks, put your neck on the line. And it changed my approach. And I tried to contribute to the decision-making process of the company, and so I learned that from some of my bosses in the past, and it was super helpful, And another thing that I've learned is we need to be fully aware, lawyers, that people have some sort of preconception about our mindset, how we think, and some sort of a posture that we have. And it's always great when people meet a lawyer who thinks differently, act differently, in a way that people don't expect. It brings a lot of openness, curiosity, psychological safety, and it's great for a lawyer, when he creates and contribute to that safe environment, because he gets a lot of information. People listening at him or her. So it's, again, a virtuous cycle.
I love the willingness to listen and then adapt and move forward and improve. And I think the way you talked about it is spot on, that you are part of the team and you're there to help the team move forward. You're not there to just give a bunch of it depends,
No,
Godspeed. You're separate from the business. You are part of the team. And I know you have a lot of experience in building teams to help you on projects, in legal departments, after you became a lawyer, and other work where we met, right? And we are in this age where we are seeing a confluence of technology and people and how you interact with them. And we're seeing a compression too of less sort of middle managers, more individual contributors using technology. And there's a lot of conflict right now, whether it's the return to the office stuff or it's I'm supposed to teach an AI bot how to do my job. I don't want to do that, all those kinds of things. And so I wanted to start first with a question I ask lots of people, which is, how do you build really good teams? How do you build that culture so that everybody feels, as you put it, psychological safety and ability to excel? How do you go about that?
I think I've learned over time, and that's something that I train managers and exec and leaders about this, is first thing first, you need to know your team members. You need to invest time as a leader to know your team members, the way they communicate, where they're coming from, their strength, their weaknesses, in which area they're comfortable, their skill. Because being a manager or a leader, in my opinion, is making sure you're putting people at the right place, and using all those skills in a complementary manner, And that's the whole idea. And I know you like sports a lot, and I always think about sports, like being a football coach, or, you come into a new team and you get this bunch of players. What are you going to do? You're going to keep repeating the same way to play, the same organization, or you'll spend time getting to know your players, what they like, how they're good at, even kind of telling some of them, you're not a cultural fit anymore in the team I want to build, because I need someone with a different expertise, or someone in a team might be a great expert, but this person might be toxic for the team dynamics. So creating a good team comes with some hard choices. It comes with it, and focusing on the people, getting to know the people, and helping them to self-develop and to master what they do. In my opinion, is what helps to build a great team. And because your role as a manager or leader, you mentioned psychological safety, it just creates that environment where people can talk to each other, they can disagree, they can share ideas. That's how your team is doing a great job and is building this continuous momentum of trusting each other, relying on each other. That's what my manager and a leader is all about, in my opinion. So
My wife, who's a very senior executive and way smarter than me, uh, she talks about it this way. She's an amazing people builder. And she talks about, I need to know you to grow you. And another friend of mine talks about it from the perspective of, my legacy is not going to be what I do. It's going to be all the people I help
there you go.
do whatever they're going to do in their career, in the job they're in now and beyond. And the way you put it there on building teams and finding the right fit, including being willing to understand that sometimes that person at that time in place doesn't fit that team perfectly, is both being transparent
There you go.
about where you are and where you sit, but being willing to invest in people. And I think that's really important because I think, again, as software eats the world, we're getting a little lost in humanity, in the idea of people are valuable. They're not just going to become bots one day, and thinking about what people do is important. How did you come about that sort of leadership skill set, a servant leader to help the people around you grow? How did you learn that?
Actually, during my career, when I was getting a team and that team was getting larger, I realized that my team members were not asking for my expertise in terms of technical side. They were looking for some inspiration. They were looking for some reassurance. They were looking for an area to vent. They were looking for a place where they could share their ambition, their self-development, their frustration about not being developed enough. And that's when I realized that my impact was all about, as you said, helping people to understand themselves, to gain the confidence in doing what they want to do for themselves, and creating the condition for them to blossom. And guess what? When you're a manager and your team members are blossoming, it impacts productivity on a positive way. It impacts engagement. It impacts employee experience. And it really helps when times are hard, challenging time, crisis. Then you can feel that your whole team is gathering around you because they know you've been there for them, you care for them, and it makes the difference. So, yes, you're right. AI will come, in my opinion, as a tool. There's something we can't replace is the energy and the power of a group of humans trusting each other to achieve something. It's look at the history, look at some situation. When we trust each other, we can achieve amazing things. So that's how I realized that, being a leader was all about focusing on my team member, my team, and serving them, if I can say that, So
I am a diehard believer that teams will always beat the best individual, right? And that's because you get a diversity of thought and a diversity of skills. And in this age where software can augment you to incredible feats, quite honestly, if we lose that ability to interact and collaborate with other humans, I don't think we're actually going to achieve what everybody hopes we achieve or what you want to impact. I am curious, right? You are in a large organization or consulting with one, right? You consult with other organizations. AI is the buzzword and the real thing in everywhere we go at this point, right? And I'm curious your thoughts, how you think it's going to impact legal. We have this world where legal hasn't particularly changed without being sort of dragged along for a very long time. And now we're at this transformative moment, and the technology is almost perfect in some ways for a lot of the work that legal professionals do. So I'm just curious your thoughts on where the nexus of AI and legal sits and how you think it's going to impact the legal industry and careers.
Love your question, Sal. And yeah,
I
it's
know it's a
going back
tough
to
one, and
to
I'm not
change.
trying to put you on the spot. I just think it's
No,
an
no, that's okay.
interesting
That's okay.
thought experiment right now.
It's a good it's a good question, but we need to go back to what we said earlier about being scared of change and resisting change. You know, change is here. Change is coming. There's no point about resisting, trying to make yourself believe that it doesn't exist. You know, it's that's the worst mistake that we can make. And as I was saying, it's an amazing tool. It helps you to do some work very quickly. When you work as a lawyer for the last 20 years, I remember when I was starting reading hundreds of pages of documentation, reading books. We're in a different area now. But guess what? What I'm very happy with, we will go back to what, in my opinion, a lawyer is all about, being an advisor. You know, that's the value added to AI and to those tools is as a human being, being trusted, coming with an idea, you know, a vision, you know, and trying to make people understand where you're going, you know, and yeah, being back to be an advisor. That's what I like about this transformation. You know, you're not spending your time focusing on tools, writing notes, but it's just kind of convincing people, helping people to understand, bringing them to where you stand. So it's, I think that's going to help to go back to being an advisor and develop some probably new skills or skill we forgot. I mean, engaging with people, connecting with people. And that's, you know, that's what I like about that, probably the transformation and that change in the legal industry.
In the work you do, I know you have like a consulting company, right? Is that
Yes, I,
correct? Well, you
yes,
have
I
a
have a,
consulting company.
yes,
Is that the one called Xperius? I don't
it
know if I
is.
pronounced that right.
No, that's right. And I actually, my son found that name because I was wanting that company to help companies to be better at people engagement, at engagement and experience. So I said to my son, "Oh, I would love to call my company Engage Us or Experience Us." And he said, "Dad, leave that with me. I come back to you." And he came with Xperius, and I was like, "Oh, brilliant!" So yes, so that's my consulting business, Xperius, and yes,
And so tell me about what you do for companies that engage you.
actually, what I do for companies that engage me with Xperius is helping them to transform, first of all, their culture, you know, assessing their company culture. Does it fit with the strategy that the business has? And how we can work together on transforming their culture, management practices. You know, some of the work that we did, I did at Elevate about the Elevate principle. You know, those values are working together to create that roadmap. You know, because you know, Peter Drucker said, I'm sure you heard that before, but culture eats strategy for breakfast. You know, so there's many people reaching out to me saying, "Well, our strategy is top notch. We have the greatest strategy on earth, but our culture is not made for that. So how we can help?" So that's part of what Xperius is doing. The second one is because I'm doing a lot. I'm doing some. I'm delivering some courses and lecture in some schools. Some professionals come to me and they want to start their own transformation and transformational journey. So I help them to elevate their game, reaching out a new altitude, working on their self-awareness. You know, so that's the whole purpose of Xperius is sharing my learnings and helping people and companies to transform and just kind of not ignoring the transformation that most of the people and employees are looking for today is meaningful contribution and meaningful connection at work. I think people are all looking for that, you know, so that's what Xperius is all about.
What is a concrete, practical tip you can give people listening on how they can get started in building a culture that gives their people, their teams, the kind of meaningful work that I think so many people are craving. I think you are 100% right that it seems has got lost. People no longer have enough meaning in their job or connection in it. How can companies, people start doing that again? I think it's so important.
Oh, I'll share with you a very simple tip, and I'm always surprised when I share that with within companies or within teams, and they say, "Oh, we never thought about it." It's like the question that I ask is, "What are the rules within your team? Is there a document that you've created all together, setting up the rules? What are the permission? What are the things we can do? How we talk to each other? What's important to us? How we achieve things? How we deal with conflict?" And my tip would be for a manager or leader to ask all his or her team to dedicate one entire day about building up together, discussing those rules, team rules, you know. And it's great because you have to co-develop something together. Everybody has the feeling that they contribute to something meaningful. And guess what? It helps the manager from time to time to remind people about the rules that we all agreed in terms of respect, communication, being on time, for example, those type of things, which the reality is those tiny things create some friction on a daily basis, and then it gets bigger, and then it gets bigger, then it triggers conflict and disagreement. People are not willing to work with each other. So my simple tip would be dedicate one day just to build up the rules within your team. So as simple as that.
I love that actionable advice. It's straightforward. You can sit down and create a structure of how you interact. I think it's something that I've worked with lots of very smart people in my career about how we communicate, how we meet deadlines, how we show up, whatever it might be. And it gives people, again, more psychological safety and understanding what it is that they're supposed to be doing and why. I actually have learned that ties really well into the culture, and culture is the most important thing in finding really good, smart, talented people, because most people don't want to work in toxic environments, no matter how much they're impacting something. And I know you in your consulting career, in legal career, have been part of building teams, finding people, hiring people. And I'm curious because this is something else that I think is pervasive right now, is this conversation around people don't want to work anymore, or I can't find the smart people anymore, or, and again, I don't know if this is the same idea of, the classic, when I was a kid, I had to walk through 7 feet of snow to go to school. And I think it's part of that idea. But I'm curious, how did you go about finding talented, high agency people? Because I think those people tend to be such a cheat code for your company, and they're difficult to find. And I'm curious your thoughts on how do you go about finding those people?
I think the first step is we live in a world where when you want to assess a company, when you want to get an idea, an insight within a company, same as, sorry for being a bit cheeky, but same as a restaurant or an hotel where you want to go, you go online, you Google the name, and then you get opinion, comments, or I work in that companies, And let's be honest, most of the people look at this, at your reputation, your branding, the experience you're offering to your people. So first thing first, you can't attract talent if as you said, if the environment you are offering is not attractive. So I think first thing first is to work on your environment. And then, is the main question would be, and the question I always ask myself when I was looking for people, what are the set of skills that I need for that particular role? Who's going to be this cheat code that you mentioned, use that term? What comes with that cheat code? Is that someone who's a great, perfect expert in his area? Or do I need someone who's able to engage with people, someone who is high in emotional intelligence, someone who's resilient, so there's some dimension I was looking for. And then I started, to use my network just to ask people saying, my trusted network, saying, have you encountered or met someone who actually display those skills, someone who was inspiring? And then you get a couple of names, and then that's, if you combine those two, a great environment that you're offering, and then you have a clear idea about what sort of profile you need, then it's, spot on. You're spot on in your recruiting and attractivity for those talents, because that's the thing, that's the reality. People are now looking at the work environment and the workplace, and not money, not work, as one of the key factor for them to decide to join or not. So
I love your focus on what you called profile. I think too often people hire on the role of the job
there you
instead
go.
of what you need out of the person,
There
right?
you go.
And that causes a real conflict when people get hired on. You had in your head the kind of person you needed, except you hired for, you know, a resume, a CV of like something on the role of the job. How do you go about building the kind of profile you might want? Because I don't think it's always obvious that I need a high emotional intelligence person, or I need maybe the technical expert is more obvious. But how do you figure out what kind of profile you want to build so that when you go look for the person for the role, you find that or the right person? How do you do that?
I think there's two dimensions that we need to look at. External. If that particular person that you want to hire will be exposed to your customer, to your suppliers, or government official, you need to figure out what sort of profile do you need in terms of technical expertise, style, approach, energy. Because those people will be, I don't know, the representative of your company. So we should not forget that. So in terms of profile, look at this. I said this person will have the name of my company on their T-shirt. They'll be representing my company. So what is the energy, the profile that I want to, and the expertise? And then the second dimension is you need to look internally. We should not forget that this new person will join an existing team. And going back to what we said earlier, so when you know your team members, when you're fully aware and in touch with your team dynamics, you know the type of profile that you need, because this person will join team. So if you get someone who's not able to connect, not at ease to connect, and who's not able to be open to new ideas, you can get the best expert on the planet. But if that person is, let's say, rejected by your group, it doesn't work. You've wasted your time. So that's those two dimensions, external and internal. Is that person a fit for my team? And is that person a fit for the vision that I have for the experience that I want to offer to my customer or supplier? So that's the two elements that I'm using to building up a profile.
I think it goes to the basic idea that a lot of people forget, which is everything requires time spent in the beginning to get right in the end. You can't just jump to the hire. You have to think about what you actually want, what skills you need, the profile you want to build, and then you can go and figure out those people. And obviously, it also goes to the fundamental understanding of how your team dynamics work, how your company works, the business outcomes, all the things connect back together. And we seem to also be in this age of shortcuts, even with AI, right? Like it's so easy to just type something in and it generates like a 70-page document. And you're like, wow, that was great. Instead of thinking through in the beginning about what you actually want, the outcomes you're trying to generate, what the things you need are.
No.
And I'm curious for you as you're advising people, as you're helping build teams, how do you help people remember that, yes, software can do so much, but if you don't spend the time thinking through what you actually want, you're not going to achieve anything?
One of the first things that I shared is a French quote which says, "Time does not respect things which are built without him."
Mm.
So yeah, so you can build up something very quickly. I can build up a house in 48 hours, But are you sure that this house will last for 10, 20, 30 years? No. If you want things to last and be sustainable, you need to take the time to think about them, to anticipate exactly where you want to go, especially dealing with people, because, you need to take some time to discuss with your team members. And every single project, you're right, every single project needs some time for self-reflection, where you're going, how you're going to get there, the resources that you need. And rushing things is good in a time where people say you need to be agile, seizing opportunities. But we need to make the difference between areas where we need to seize opportunities to be very agile, and other dimension where we need to take some time. We need to carefully think and design what we are expecting, where we want to go, because it's the guarantee for this to last, in my opinion. So yeah, you're right. Some things deserve a bit of time.
I think to build anything enduring, you have to go slow to go fast. You have to
There
think
you go.
through a little bit why you're doing it so that you can run faster later. And I think that gets lost a lot right now. That hard things sometimes are hard work, and that's okay. And that's actually a good thing. You also, I think, learn in a different way if you take the time to work through something and you get clarity in what you're trying to achieve. And so I think it's really important advice you give to people is to remember that if you want something to endure, it needs thought, and you need to take the time to work through it and understand why you're doing it. And so I think that's great advice. Today we have talked about your journey. We've talked about mindfulness and self-confidence and how they all work together, and the kind of work you do now and the kind of world you want to build and be impacted. As we close out the show, I'm curious what you would like the audience to take away from today, a little nugget or thought that they can leave with from you.
Thank you for that great opportunity, Sal. And I would say we should never forget that we are role modeling. Someone is looking at you, even if you don't notice it, even if you don't realize it, someone is looking at you as a role model. Could be your child, could be your friends, could be your co-workers, so therefore realizing that you are inspiring someone to do things, to act in a certain way, makes you accountable for your behavior and the experience you are offering to people on a daily basis at work or in your life. Is being aware about the experience you are offering and the model that you are proposing to the world around you. So that's my piece of advice.
It is incredible advice that I'll create a snippet of, which is model the behavior you want to see in the world.
There you go.
And I think it's so simple and so many people forget it. And it's not that you're supposed to be perfect. You're not perfect. I'm not perfect. We make mistakes all the time. But if you make a concerted effort to try to be the person you want others to be, the world's going to be a better place. You're going to be a happier person. And I love that advice. Thank you so much for being on PossibLaw today. Will, I can't wait till we talk again. I think we could dive hours into each of these ideas. And I know our audience appreciates you having on today, and I can't wait till the next time. Thank you.
Yeah, looking forward to it. Thanks for having me. I really enjoy the time we spent together, and having those deep conversations with you, Sad, is always an amazing experience. So thank you for that. Looking forward to the next conversation.